Candidates, please be ready for the passage. Mr. Chairman, Sir, I stand here today to speak not as a privileged member of a committee, which was constituted to look into the problems faced by the poor industrial workers, but as a former industrial worker myself. Over the years, I had been intimately connected with most of the issues faced by the workers. In fact, I had experienced those difficulties firsthand myself. Sir, the workers in various factories and mills in our country have always found themselves at the receiving end. Their conditions of work are difficult. Their so-called rights to seek improvement in their lot is more difficult and cumbersome. And the rules and regulations governing their conditions of work are difficult, cumbersome and rigid. In fact, the workers are often exploited and continue to be at the mercy of their employers and authorities concerned. They are mere puppets in the hands of their economic masters. The government has announced mega plans and incentives for ease of doing business. However, I must emphasize that any business can survive and thrive only if the workers there feel happy and contented. It is true that if the worker is happy, then his efficiency improves, his productivity enhances, and as a result, the production increases. Keeping this in mind, it is good to see that the Centre has chosen to include the employees' unions in the proposed Memorandum of Understanding. The government's intention is also indicative of its seriousness with which it is approaching the resolution this time around. The workers, who have been a key element in the growth and development of the banking sector, have a vested interest in the health of the public sector banks. The risk of continued failure is closure and job losses for them as also for any industry. To be sure, the central government has to work simultaneously in close collaboration with the banking regulator and the lenders themselves to frame appropriate mechanism to enable the implementation of the turnaround plan for the banking sector. The government has also to make efforts to resolve the burning issue of the stressed assets of the public sector banks. Moreover, as Shri Jaitley pointed out, the public sector banks' managements would need to be empowered so that forced losses made by banks under a feasible economic plan would be required by government ruling as being acceptable by the vigilance authorities. This move of the government will surely enhance the economic prudence in the banking sector. Sir, as we all know, trust is the bedrock of banking. It is the foundation of the entire banking ecosystem. The stipulation of a 3-year time limit for the implementation of the turnaround is also significant. There is a threat, I may say, of stressed assets of the banking sector. Their non-performing assets or NPAs have hit a new high. There is, therefore, little time to lose, and the government and the banks have their work cut out if India is to avoid the spectre of weak banks having little incentive to lend, and economic activity affected for want of credit. The government seems poised to take a major leap towards implementing direct benefit transfer, or DBT, or fertilizer subsidy to farmers. From the coming Kharif season, starting June, subsidy will be paid to the companies only after the purchase of fertilizer by the farmer. True, this is not a direct benefit transfer in the strictest sense of the term, because the subsidy is still getting credited to the company and not the farmer. But the proposed reform is not insignificant. Currently, companies are paid subsidy once the fertilizer has been dispatched from their plants and received at the railhead or the approved godown of a district. There is no foolproof mechanism to ensure that there is no diversion of the subsidized material from these points for sale in the open market or to neighboring countries or for non-agricultural use. This state of affairs will change once the subsidy payment takes place after the fertilizer is actually bought by the intended beneficiary, namely the farmer. To enable the changeover, the present government has targeted the installation of point of sale, or POS, machines in all the 2 lakh odd fertilizer retail outlets in the country. These devices, connected to a central server, would capture every sale transaction along with details about the buyer. The biggest benefit from the system is that information will now be available on who is buying and how much. If somebody is buying a truckload of urea, 200 bags or more, that person clearly is not a farmer. The data generated by the system will be able to identify such persons. Even if they are actual farmers, they can be identified for exclusion from the subsidy scheme. A farmer applying 200 bags of urea in a season would have a holding of at least 65 acres. He would be as undeserving of subsidy as the unscrupulous plywood maker who uses urea as a cheap binder material. The present measure will rein in those dishonest persons and traders. Sir, data generation and identification of deserving beneficiaries can only be the first step. It should be followed by the next logical stage of the subsidy getting credited directly to the bank accounts of the beneficiaries who have been identified. Such targeted transfers, along with free pricing, which leads farmers to buy fertilizers that are most suitable for the crop and soil, is what the direct benefit transfer is ultimately about. The present government today has the political mandate and political legitimacy to undertake this reform that is in the farmer's long-term interest. Doing that in stages or in a phased manner, starting with dispersal of subsidy to companies after they complete the sale to farmers makes sense. Many members might argue that these machines will fail and capturing millions of transactions would be a recipe for chaos.